Have you ever looked at a bowl of cereal, a glass of orange juice, or a packet of instant oatmeal and thought, that's a safe breakfast, that's the healthy choice? For millions of seniors, that belief feels completely reasonable. But what if that so-called healthy breakfast is doing something very different inside your body? What if it is quietly spiking your blood sugar, pushing your insulin higher, increasing cravings a few hours later, and nudging your body toward more belly fat, more inflammation, and faster aging? And this is where it gets more important after 50, because the breakfast that your body handled at 30 is not the breakfast your body handles the same way at 60, 70, or 80. I'm Dr. Leana, and today I want to show you why one of the most common healthy breakfasts may be working against you, what it is actually doing inside your cells, and what to eat instead if you want steadier energy, less fat storage around the middle, and better support for healthy aging. Let's start with the breakfast trap almost nobody talks about. The problem is not breakfast itself. Breakfast is not the enemy. The real problem is a breakfast that looks light, clean, quick, and harmless, but acts more like dessert once it gets into your bloodstream. I'm talking about the kind of breakfast many older adults were taught to trust. Sweetened cereal, toast with jam, a muffin and juice, flavored yogurt, instant oatmeal packets, granola bars, even some heart-healthy breakfast foods that are little more than refined starch with sugar added on top. On the surface, these foods seem innocent. They're easy to chew, easy to prepare, often low in fat, sometimes even labeled whole grain, natural, multigrain, or fortified. But here's what most people never get told. Your body does not respond to a breakfast based on advertising words. Your body responds to chemistry. And when that breakfast is built mostly from refined carbohydrates and added sugar, it can set off a chain reaction that becomes more damaging with age. The first thing that happens is speed. These foods are broken down quickly. That means sugar enters the bloodstream fast. Blood glucose rises sharply, and your pancreas responds by releasing insulin, the hormone that helps move glucose out of the blood and into cells. That part is normal. Insulin is not bad. Inflammation is not always bad either. The body uses these systems for survival and repair. The problem begins when this cycle gets pushed too hard, too often. When breakfast causes a rapid glucose spike, insulin often rises higher to bring that sugar down. Then a few hours later, many people feel the result. They get hungry again. Their energy dips. Their thinking feels foggy. They start looking for something sweet or starchy to pick them up. And now the day is no longer being driven by stable fuel. It's being driven by blood sugar swings. That is the breakfast trap. It doesn't just feed you, it programs the rest of your day. And for seniors, that matters enormously. Because after 50, your metabolism is not just slower in some vague way. The deeper issue is that your body often becomes less flexible. You may have less muscle than you used to. Your cells may not respond to insulin as efficiently as they once did. You may be carrying more visceral fat, the fat packed around the organs, which tends to send out inflammatory signals of its own. So the same breakfast that once gave you a quick boost may now hit your body like a metabolic stress test. Here's why. Muscle acts like one of the body's biggest storage sites for glucose. It helps soak up sugar from the blood. But as we age, we naturally lose muscle mass if we are not actively protecting it with protein intake and resistance activity. Less muscle means less room for glucose to go. So when you eat a refined carb breakfast, the sugar surge may hit harder and linger longer. And this is where many seniors get frustrated. They say, I barely eat anything. I only had toast and juice. Or, I just had a small bowl of cereal. Or, I'm eating oatmeal, so I thought I was doing everything right. But a small breakfast is not automatically a metabolically smart breakfast. If that meal is mostly fast-digesting carbohydrate with little protein and very little fiber, the body may still respond with a sharp rise in glucose and insulin, followed by another wave of hunger. That is one reason some people feel tired by mid-morning, even after eating. They are not always lacking food. They may be riding a glucose roller coaster, and this is where belly fat enters the story. Belly fat is not just about eating too many calories at one meal. It is strongly tied to hormonal signals, insulin response, muscle mass, inflammation, sleep, and the overall pattern of how the body stores and uses energy. When insulin rises, one of its jobs is to help store nutrients. That is useful in the right context. But when insulin is elevated repeatedly in a body that is becoming more insulin resistant, fat storage becomes easier and fat burning becomes harder. Think of insulin like a traffic officer directing fuel. In a healthy, flexible system, the traffic moves well. Sugar goes where it needs to go. The roads stay clear. But in insulin resistance, traffic starts backing up. The pancreas has to wave harder. More insulin is needed. More fuel gets mismanaged. And over time, that kind of metabolic traffic jam can make it easier to store fat, especially around the abdomen. That belly fat is not passive. It is biologically active. It behaves almost like an organ, releasing chemical messengers that may contribute to chronic low-grade inflammation. Not the acute inflammation that helps you heal from an injury. That kind is normal and necessary. I'm talking about the slow, simmering inflammatory state that has been linked to metabolic disease, heart disease, and many problems associated with aging. So now you can see the chain. A refined breakfast causes a rapid blood sugar rise. That can drive a larger insulin response. Over time, repeated spikes may worsen insulin resistance. Insulin resistance can make fat storage easier, especially around the midsection. And excess abdominal fat can intensify inflammatory signaling. That is why this breakfast issue goes deeper than weight alone. It is about the biological environment you are creating every morning. But the real reason this matters goes even deeper. Because one of the least discussed effects of repeated sugar overload is something called glycation. This is one of the hidden aging mechanisms most people never hear about. Glycation happens when excess sugar attaches to proteins or fats in the body in a harmful way. Over time, this can lead to the formation of compounds called advanced glycation end products, often shortened to AGEs. You do not need to memorize the term. What matters is what they do. Think of glycation like sticky sugar damage. It can affect blood vessels, it can affect tissues, it can contribute to oxidative stress, which is like internal rusting, it can amplify wear and tear in the body, and it has been linked to many features of biological aging. So when I say that a sugary, refined breakfast may contribute to faster aging, I am not talking about a dramatic overnight effect. I am talking about repeated metabolic stress, repeated glucose spikes, repeated insulin surges, repeated inflammatory pressure, and repeated glycation over time. That is how aging often works. Not in one big event, but in small signals repeated for years. Now, I want to be careful here. This does not mean one bowl of cereal ruins your health. It does not mean you can never eat toast again. And it does not mean every carbohydrate is bad. That kind of extreme thinking is not helpful. Whole fruit is not the same as fruit juice. Steel-cut oats are not the same as sugary instant oatmeal packets. Plain Greek yogurt is not the same as dessert-like flavored yogurt. Real whole grains with fiber behave very differently from highly processed breakfast products. The issue is not simply carbs. The issue is refined, fast-digesting carbs eaten without enough protein, fiber, and structure to slow the metabolic hit. And that brings us to the most important question. What should breakfast look like instead? This is where many people expect a complicated plan, but the solution is actually simple. A better breakfast for most seniors follows a very clear formula: protein first, fiber second, healthy fat third, and refined carbs either minimized or paired intelligently. Why protein first? Because protein helps with fullness. It tends to slow the meal down. It can reduce the urge to snack later. And after 50, it becomes even more valuable because muscle maintenance matters so much for glucose control, strength, mobility, and healthy aging. Remember, muscle is not just for movement. Muscle is a major metabolic ally. Then comes fiber. Fiber helps slow digestion, soften glucose spikes, support gut health, and improve fullness. It acts like a braking system. Instead of fuel slamming into the bloodstream all at once, fiber helps create a slower, steadier release. Then healthy fats. Not because you need a greasy breakfast, but because a moderate amount of healthy fat can help make the meal more satisfying and can further reduce that quick in and out effect you get from a sugary breakfast. So what does this look like in real life? It could be eggs with vegetables and a side of berries. It could be plain Greek yogurt with chia seeds, walnuts, and blueberries. It could be unsweetened oatmeal, not the sugary packets, topped with flaxseed, cinnamon, and a protein source on the side. It could be cottage cheese with sliced fruit and a few nuts. It could even be leftovers from dinner: beans, salmon, tofu, vegetables. There is no law that says breakfast must look like cereal or toast. And this is where many seniors feel relieved. Because the goal is not perfection, it is protection. You are building a breakfast that keeps you stable instead of stimulating a spike crash cycle. Now let me show you some of the biggest breakfast mistakes that fool even health-conscious people. Mistake number 1 is drinking your fruit instead of eating it. Fruit juice may sound natural, but once the fiber is removed, the sugar reaches the bloodstream much faster. Whole fruit comes with fiber, structure, and a slower effect. Juice often behaves more like a sugar delivery system than people realize. Mistake number 2 is choosing flavored yogurt. A lot of yogurts are marketed as healthy because they contain calcium or probiotics. But if they are loaded with added sugar, they can easily become dessert in disguise. Plain yogurt with your own berries is a completely different metabolic story. Mistake number 3 is relying on instant oatmeal packets. Oatmeal can absolutely be a good breakfast, but not all oatmeal is created equal. Sweetened packets often contain added sugar and are processed to digest faster. That means a very different response than old-fashioned or steel-cut oats paired with protein and seeds. Mistake number 4 is eating toast by itself. Toast is not evil, but toast alone is incomplete. Bread without protein or fiber support is more likely to leave you hungry again. If someone wants toast, it is smarter to anchor it with eggs, cottage cheese, nut butter, or another protein source and keep portions realistic. Mistake number 5 is trusting low-fat too much. For decades, many people were taught that low-fat automatically meant healthier. But when fat is removed from a food, manufacturers often add sugar, starches, or flavorings to make it taste good again. So a product can be low in fat and still be metabolically unhelpful. And here is the deeper truth underneath all of this. Many seniors are not overeating because they lack willpower. They are trapped in a biological loop created by the wrong breakfast. A fast breakfast creates a fast glucose rise. That rise is followed by a stronger insulin response. That can be followed by a drop in energy and a return of hunger. That leads to grazing, cravings, and more starch or sugar later. And then people blame themselves when the real problem began at 8 a.m. This is why changing breakfast can have a surprisingly powerful ripple effect. Many people notice that when breakfast becomes more protein-centered and less sugar-driven, they feel calmer around food. They are less snacky. Their energy is steadier. Their afternoon crash improves. Their waistline becomes easier to manage. Not because they found a miracle food, but because they stopped starting the day with metabolic chaos. Now, there are a few important cautions. If you have diabetes and take medication, especially insulin or drugs that lower blood sugar, major diet changes should be made carefully with your clinician because your glucose response may change. If you take warfarin, keep vitamin K-rich foods consistent rather than making sudden swings. If you have kidney disease, frailty, swallowing difficulty, poor appetite, or unintended weight loss, your breakfast needs may be more individualized. And of course, food supports health. It does not replace medical treatment for diabetes, heart disease, inflammatory conditions, or other serious illness. But that said, breakfast is one of the most powerful daily opportunities you have to either support healthier biology or push against it. So let's bring this all together. The breakfast many seniors think is healthy is often built around refined carbohydrates and added sugar. That kind of breakfast can spike blood sugar quickly. It can push insulin higher. It can lead to rebound hunger, energy crashes, and more cravings later. Over time, that pattern may support belly fat gain, worsen insulin resistance, feed chronic low-grade inflammation, and contribute to glycation, one of the quiet mechanisms tied to faster aging. But when breakfast shifts toward protein, fiber, and minimally processed whole foods, the body often responds in a completely different way. Steadier fuel, better fullness, better support for muscle, less glucose chaos, and a better metabolic environment for aging well. So before you pour that cereal, open that juice, or grab that healthy breakfast bar tomorrow morning, ask yourself one simple question. Is this breakfast feeding me, or is it feeding the very problems I'm trying to escape? I'm Dr. Leana, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What does your usual breakfast look like right now? And which one item are you going to change after hearing this? If this video helped you see breakfast in a completely different way, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it with a friend or family member who still believes that cereal, toast, and juice are the safest way to start the day.